A woman drove her car into a guy. The guy's head went through the windshield, but when the woman came to her senses, she acted as if she hadn't seen anything. She drove off with the guy in the windshield. She pulled into her garage and got out. The guy in the windshield was barely alive but breathing. The next morning, the woman left the house wearing mismatched shoes. She had a massive bump on her forehead. She got into her car and drove off with the guy still in the windshield. A family of 4 was eating outside at a taco place, commenting on cars with Halloween decorations. They saw the car with the guy in the windshield.
That level of violence is totally acceptable to me.
And after seeing the body move, the dad called 911, but since it was Halloween, the dispatcher had already received dozens of similar calls. She didn't take it seriously until later that evening, when an off-duty firefighter named Buck stopped at a gas station and noticed the woman with the guy in her car windshield. At first he thought it was a decoration, but then he noticed the body moving. He got into his car and chased after her. Buck stopped in front of the woman. He checked the woman's pupil response. She had likely suffered a brain injury from the crash. He quickly went to check on the man and found that he was still alive. The paramedics arrived shortly after, and the man was finally saved. A truck caught fire on a downtown street. Firefighters arrived at the scene. The driver was rescued by 2 passers-by. At that moment, the ambulance also arrived. As the firefighters were about to secure the injured driver and put him on the stretcher, the truck suddenly exploded. Even worse, the truck started sliding on its own. The firefighters quickly tried to stop it with a chalk, but it was too late. The truck was already rolling towards the injured person. At the critical moment, Kelly decisively grabbed a fire hydrant and rushed in front of the truck. The chief followed closely and pulled Kelly out. What brave firefighters they were. The fuel hose at the gas station broke. The emergency shutoff had been damaged. The tanker truck driver also ran away. Before running, he even locked the truck. The nearby food truck area caught on fire. A group of firefighters were worried sick. The captain had them set up a containment to keep the gas out of the street. The containment had just been completed. A few errant sparks ignited the spilled gas. This instantly made the firefighting efforts much more difficult. The captain said there were tanks underground, and if the tanker blew, the whole block would go with it. Now they were spraying foam over the flames, but with the gas still flowing, they were actually fighting a losing battle. At this moment, Vic suggested that she could go in and clamp the hose off to stop the gas flow. She had to be extremely careful with every step because the ground was slick with gasoline. If she slipped, the gasoline would reignite upon contact with air. Travis kept a close eye on her feet, immediately covering each step with foam as she moved. In this way, she managed to complete the task safely. By this time, the temperature had already risen to 478 degrees. She started to walk back, but slipped, and the gas reignited. Travis and Maya yelled for her to run as Travis sprayed her with the foam. Finally, she made it out. Do not touch the patient during defibrillation, or else this would be the result. Just a moment ago, a man collapsed on the beach. The woman said she had taken his paddle board out. When she came back, he was clutching his chest, and he collapsed. Brett said he didn't have a pulse.
Is he dying?
What are you guys, friends?
He's my fiance.
Then Jessica prepared the defibrillator to shock the man, but at that moment the man was still in v-tach. Jessica told Brett to continue CPR while she prepared to intubate the man. At this point, the man's condition was still very bad. The woman was also extremely nervous. The paramedic took out the AP and gave the man the first dose of AP, but then something unexpected happened.
She not know what clear me?
The woman was also shocked, and she went into V-fib. After another shock to the woman, she finally regained a rhythm. Meanwhile, the man showed no improvement. Jessica decided to give him another dose of AP. At that moment, another ambulance arrived. When the paramedic learned that the man had already been given 4 doses of AP, he said push one more and call it. He wasn't going to make it.
Oh, I'm not doing that. I don't give a damn what the SMOs say.
Brett said last shot. Finally, the man got a pulse.
Praise the Lord.
Was there anything worse in the world? A woman about to give birth was robbed and shot at the train station while the paramedics were providing aid. The woman kept saying,
The baby, it's a boy. He's gonna be okay, right?
as she was being put onto the ambulance, that she was going into labor.
Oh, he wants to come out now.
Jessica said she was having contractions and could already see the baby's head. Brett thought for a moment and said they couldn't wait, so they would deliver the baby right there.
Come on, Alicia, we can do this. Just one more nice, strong push, okay?
After the woman screamed in pain, the baby came out. The woman then asked in confusion, why isn't he making any noise? Brett quickly performed resuscitation on the baby. Soon Brett said she felt a pulse in the baby, but it was very weak. Hearing this, the mother sighed in relief and quietly closed her eyes, clearly having lost her pulse. Jessica told Brett to start the car while she continued to perform CPR on the woman, but due to the severity of her injuries, they were unable to save her in the end.
There was a hole on the man's face. The paramedic looked closely. It was clearly a gunshot wound, and the boy beside him looked panicked. The man said he was cleaning his gun, thinking it was unloaded, but it accidentally went off. Jessica didn't believe him because there were no burn marks on the wound. This indicated it wasn't shot at close range. The man was definitely lying. When looking at the boy holding his shoulder, the paramedic understood immediately.
Hurt your arm. Daddy's gonna jump back when you pull the trigger, didn't it?
The boy nodded. Indeed, the son had shot him, but it was an accident. The man said he always locked the gun, with the key hanging around his neck, but he took it off while showering, and the son found it. Then he begged the paramedics to keep it a secret. He said his wife died a year ago, leaving him alone with his son. If the cop knew about this, he would lose custody. At that moment, 2 cops arrived. Seeing the wound on the man's face, they instantly recognized it as a gunshot. The cop asked what happened,
I don't know. Nisha isn't talking for a while.
and said she needed to get a stair chair, then got him over to med. The boy had to go along too. After hearing this, the cops temporarily relented. The man looked gratefully at Jessica, mouthing the words "thank you." The woman shouted loudly for help. She said her husband couldn't breathe. The man was lying on the sofa. His tongue was swollen and protruding from his mouth. He was about to stop breathing. Mika suspected he had an allergic reaction, but the woman said her husband had no history of allergies, and they had only eaten pizza for dinner until Mika opened the man's mouth. They finally found something. A spider was in the man's throat. Mika gently grasped the spider with tweezers, slowly took it out, but the man was still in danger. His blood pressure was dropping rapidly. He was about to go into anaphylactic shock. Mika quickly administered an injection of adrenaline. The allergic symptoms disappeared immediately. The man finally returned to normal. The woman held her son and cried for help. She said her son suddenly couldn't breathe. He had been playing with toys in the living room. Suddenly, he started making choking sounds. Mooch quickly laid the boy flat. The woman said she hit his back, gave him the Heimlich, but nothing was working. His condition was getting worse. Brett shone a flashlight into his nasal cavity. Mooch saw something in his right nostril. It must be what's causing the fluid buildup in his throat. Mooch asked the woman blow air into her son's mouth, ensuring it completely covered his mouth. Then he pinched the left nostril. The woman immediately began to blow air. The increased pressure in the mouth passed into the nasal cavity, ejecting the metal object. The boy coughed and began to breathe again. The metal object that fell to the ground turned out to be a button battery. If it had gone down his throat, it could have killed the boy. Please comment if you saw a child stuffing something up their nose. The man had just come home from the army. He wanted to surprise his wife. However, to his despair, he was accidentally hit by his wife's car. Just moments ago, the woman had been driving their daughter to church for a baptism. The husband's sudden return caught her off guard, and she was overwhelmed with excitement. She didn't notice the car approaching from side and accidentally ran over her husband. The man was firmly trapped under the car, with blood flowing profusely from his leg. The paramedic diagnosed an injury to the popliteal artery. To rescue the man quickly, firefighters secured the car and attempted to lift it with jaws of life. The man cried out in pain, revealing that his leg was tightly stuck under the chassis. A firefighter suggested applying lubricant to try. They quickly applied lubricant to his thigh. As the car was lifted again, they successfully freed his leg. Unfortunately, the man fell unconscious. Paramedics immediately began resuscitation efforts. After 20 minutes, there was still no response from the man. Realizing the gravity of the situation, his wife held their daughter close, wanting her to see the father one last time. At that moment, the baby girl, who was just learning to speak, perhaps hearing his daughter's call, the man's heart started beating again. In order to make money, the woman played games during a live stream. The game was called Pin the Tail on the Donkey. She blindfolded herself, just about to pin the donkey's tail. However, an accident was about to happen. Today was her son's birthday. For the sake of views, she planned a birthday party and live streamed the whole event, but her son didn't like the arrangement. He played on the trampoline, complaining to his friend about his mom, and just then the accident happened. The boy was terrified and immediately called 911, saying his mom got pinned on the donkey. The paramedic checked the woman's condition. They found she was pinned to the door into places, one on her hand and one on her torso. It seemed the springs had flown at a high speed, but fortunately her hand could still move, so no tendons or nerves were damaged. Getting bilateral breath sounds. Pulse is slightly elevated, but BP's normal, indicating her lungs were not punctured. But how to detach her from the barn? The firefighter then had his team saw down the entire door. They didn't even need a stretcher, but the door wouldn't fit in the ambulance, so they had to take her like that.